Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest Lunchtime Bites webinar from the ICBE Business Excellence SkillNet. Today, our presenter is Joyce of Moving Forward. Kay is a business and career coach, organization development consultant, and founder of Moving Forward. Kay helps organizations, teams, and individuals connect people, strategy, and activity to business performance from coaching, learning and development, engagement, culture, change, personal skills, development, talent planning, team effectiveness, and much more. Kay brings 30 years experience from the IT and life sciences industry, where she was a business leader in HR and L&D up to global director level, leading local and remote teams. Kay holds a master's in HR, is a qualified business coach, qualified in MBTI, Belbin, and emotional intelligence. Today's topic area is emotional intelligence in a time of uncertainty. This 30-minute session will focus on deepening your awareness at an emotional level, whether it is dealing with your own emotions as a leader, the emotions of your team, the emotions of your family, and those around you. The ground rules for today: Kay will present for approximately 20 minutes, finishing up with a 10-minute Q&A. Everyone is muted, but we really do encourage you to submit questions or comments via the chat function, which we will call out at the end of the presentation. This session is being recorded. If you experience any problems with broadband, please be patient and hold on while we rectify. And without further delay, I'll pass you over to Joyce.
Thanks, Owen. Okay, so let's go through the agenda for today. I'm delighted to be with you on this really interesting topic. Lots of time we're in. So what I'm going to talk about today is how our brain processes emotion. I'm going to look at a model, an emotional intelligence model by Dr. Martin Newman. And much of the models, you know, there's a similarity between Goleman and Baron as well. So he built on that, so we'll talk about that. I'm going to talk about 10 dynamic emotions that are going on with us at the same time. I'm going to pick out 3 that are very important at this time of uncertainty. I have a reading list there, and we have Q&A. But I suppose to get a sense of if you have had assessment yourself, we're going to run a poll. So I guess, Owen, for you to run that poll just to get a sense.
You might just pass on the poll because I think they might have turned it off for today. So the 2 polls that we have, you might just ask people to put it into chat if possible, just yes or no as an answer to the question.
Perfect. So the question, I suppose, that we're asking is, have you had your emotional intelligence assessed? So we'll just get a sense of if people have had any experience in it. And typically it's in the form of a questionnaire. So I'm qualified, I'm through the Emotional Capital Inventory Model with Dr. Martin Newman. Typically you fill in the questionnaire yourself, and ideally you get a 360. So you get your boss, your peers, your direct reports, because often we can have blind spots. So we can think we're great at empathy, but actually it looks like we have some gaps in that area that we can work on. So it's great to get that holistic view in addition to just our own view. So that's just
right. Kate, most of the answers that come in is no.
Okay, that's fine. And again, I think it's an ever increasing area in personal development. It's being put into more leadership programs now than it used to be, you know, with this whole area of mindfulness and stress and well-being and stuff like that. So that's great. Thanks very much. Okay, so let's go into looking at how the brain processes emotions then. So the limbic system is where emotions are experienced and processed in our brain. I suppose for emotional intelligence to work best, there needs to be that effective communication between the rational and the emotional brain. Our best and worst experiences, so when we're really happy about something or something joyful happens in our lives, we're more inclined to experience happiness. If something difficult or negative happens in our lives, like say a bereavement or a difficult situation, you know, the likelihood is that we'll have some negative emotions around that. I suppose the question is for us how we process it. The amygdala there you can see, you know, on the lower part of the picture is the predominant controller of emotions and feelings. So it operates as that warning system for us. So you've probably heard of that phrase, fight or flight. So if I have some situation that I don't want to deal with, I want to fight against that emotion. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to deal with it. You know, I could be potentially blocking it. I will have to deal with it at some point, but I may fight it or I may fly away from it. So I don't want to deal with it right now. I might come back to it later. So again, that warning system happens in the amygdala. So a little bit of science to start off with. Looking at the model then. So Dr. Martin Newman, as I said already, he's the co-founder of Roche Martin. He has built on the studies of Goleman and Baron. So again, he has a total model with 3 components in it. So again, we have an inner focus around emotions, we have an outer focus, and we have an other focus as well. So what we're going to do is go through these with, I'll give you some examples around them. So he has identified 10 dynamic emotions in total, and you will recognize a lot of these, and some of us are better at these than others. So when we look at the inner focus, that's about self-knowing. And I suppose an example there is how emotionally aware we are. So some of us, you know, and I was talking to Owen there before we kicked off, some of us have dealt with emotion in our families in a different way. So some families are really good at it, sitting down, talking, working through, and then other families, you know, might block it more. We talk about, you know, bumps in the carpet, elephants in the corner, all these analogies that we have. So again, it will come back, and our own emotional intelligence will come back to how we process it. Looking at straightforwardness then. So that's around how assertive I am. So an example there is if I'm assertive or not. Self-control, then an example of that is how calm I may be or not. Self-confidence then is how much I like myself. So how much do I recognize myself, you know, for the good things that I do. I recognize the role I play in my team and work, or in my family, or in the world in general. Self-confidence, I talked about that one. Self-reliance then, that's around independence. So in terms of how independent I am, do I like autonomy? Do I not? You know, is it easy for me to rely on myself? Do I need others or not? Looking at the outer focus then. So adaptability is the first one there. So adaptability is around how flexible I am. Am I open-minded? Do I have bias? Optimism is another one. It's a really nice word, optimism, and we all are trying to be as optimistic as possible at this time, you know, and sometimes we may be more pessimistic than optimistic. So I suppose optimism is about our outlook. You know, are we looking at the potential? Resilience is another great word we hear at this time. You know, there's a lot been brought into leadership programs around this as well, just about how resilient I am in a time of uncertainty and change. The last one there on outer focus is self-actualization. We've probably heard this mostly from the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So again, if you remember that pyramid, it's at the top of the pyramid there. So when we have all the other areas met in our lives, the basic needs that we need, we will eventually reach self-actualization. How that translates, however, would be through our drive and passion. That we be in our personality, in our work, in our life, with our family, with our friends, whatever that may be. The last two then are empathy. So empathy is, again, you know, really important at this time. How that can translate for us is how we listen. So again, I might, you know, be after being on my own for a few hours, I might now connect in with somebody. I need to then listen and empathize with that person in terms of how they're feeling. And relationship skills then. And an example here, a great example here is empowerment. And again, how are we empowering people, you know, that we work with, our peers, our direct report, even our manager, our family, friends. So again, around the relationship skills. These are all important. So I know I'm asking you a really tough question now to select the most two that you see important at this time of uncertainty. So if you all could, you want people to put it in the chat?
Yeah, if people mind putting it into chat just while the poll seems to be off.
So what do you see as the most important two at this time? And I know it's a real challenge because they're all important, but let's see what people think. And kind of your gut level, don't overanalyze it.
So again, quite a variance from adaptability and empathy, adaptability, self-knowing, self-control and adaptability, self-control again, self-reliance and adaptability, adaptability and empathy. So adaptability seems to be the one that's come up most of all of them. And empathy, I would imagine, and self-reliance are kind of following in. Empathy probably would be number two.
Yeah. So again, there's no right or wrong answer here. It's just really, and we will all have different places that we're coming from at this time. So let's go into a little bit of detail around it then. So I suppose the example of uncertainty is the COVID-19 pandemic that we're living in at the moment, and the 3 ways to increase motivation in those times of uncertainty. So the 3 that, you know, Dr. Martin has done some research on this are self-reliance, which is from the inner focus, self-actualization, the outer focus, and empathy is the 3rd one that has been selected there. So let's go into a bit of detail on it. I know there's a bit of detail on the slides. I was conscious that they were going to be put up afterwards, so I'm not going to read every word. I'll just pick out the main points. So let's look at self-reliance first. So this is, I suppose the focus here is around personal control over circumstances, and that can be really difficult. I suppose all we can focus, if we think of the moment we're in right now, if I get everybody to just think about where you are right now and be really present in the current moment. It's very easy for us to get distracted. So we're thinking about maybe something we did yesterday, something we're to do tomorrow, maybe we're thinking about somebody who's having a bad time, or we're trying to connect in with family. So again, it's very easy for us, I suppose, to lose that control. We have, I suppose, the power to do that. So I mean, personally, I can become unfocused. For me, you know, writing out even that list of what I have to do every day and what I need to have control over can really help. So small things like this, because in a time like this we can get distracted, but we can remember that we can only control, you know, the current moment that we're in. When people feel concerned in uncertain circumstances, it can drain motivation and people can become less productive. And I'd say we're seeing that now. People are on endless calls, there's endless demands, there's a lot of emotion going on with them and their teams. They're trying to understand that, they're trying to understand their own. There's a lot of projects and work maybe being paused or put on hold. So we're worried about if that's going to come back. Everyone's talking about this new normal. What's that going to be? So again, you know, as people work from home, it's a great opportunity for us to think about our own self-reliance. And I suppose, how do we empower ourselves and others along the way? This is a nice point, I think, the next one there around decision making and involvement. So the importance of involving people at this time, not over involving, just involving at the right time. In dialogue, conversation, this will really increase ownership and accountability. You know yourself when you're involved in some decision or some part of work, when you're involved in, you know, carving that out or moving that forward, you really feel more ownership and accountability there. The last point, the consultative approach. So that's really around asking questions. It's a really powerful way of checking in with somebody. So how do you think we should handle this? How are you feeling at the moment? How can I support you? What will work best for you? Instead of making presumptions. I suppose at the moment now we don't see people. We're not sitting beside people. So I don't have my team around me now. I have to connect in more, you know, virtually over camera. So again, just to ask those questions, I think is really important at this time. Looking at the next one then, which is the outer focus. And this is around self-actualization. So we know ourselves, and when people have a clear vision and understand their role, their motivation can move from that externally driven focus part to that internally powered. That's, I suppose, where we're all trying to get to. When we're more internally driven and powered, we're more focused, we're more driven, we're more motivated, and the likelihood is that we will perform better. So Maslow, as we know, talked about self-actualization at the top of the pyramid, doing what you can do. So again, there's lots of things outside our own control at the moment. We don't know how this is going to move forward. We're in phase 1. We don't know how it's going to move to phase 2. We're wishing everything could open up and go back to normal. We could have some socializing again, or whatever it is for you, but we can only do what we can do within this area. And it kind of connects into a previous point around being in your own control. Maslow also identified, you know, the most powerful motivation arises when people are engaged in work that's meaningful. So again, we can get very distracted at the moment. You know, again, it's really important that we keep motivated and keep focused, whether it's on our own work or other people's work, or if we're leading a team, to make sure that we're really focusing on what's the right thing to do for the business and for the person. Working remotely, and I've heard this a lot, and it'd be interesting to see if you're experiencing it too. People are really, you know, struggling with this prioritization and these competing demands. So we have Zoom calls, we have there's lots and lots of webinars going on, which is fantastic. We maybe have our families near us we need to talk to. Somebody's having a good day or a bad day we need to attend to. We're trying to get work done. So there's lots of competing demands. And the last point is around that intrinsic motivation. So sharpening our focus, keeping our energy, and maintaining that commitment. So if you have anybody that, you know, you feel that really needs that, ask them the questions, you know, and ask them what you can do for them in that situation. Looking at the last one here is all around empathy. And this is in the other focus of the model. So remember what empathy is. It's the capacity to be aware, understand, and appreciate the feelings and thoughts of others. It's really, really easy, you know, and typically our home base is to see and experience the world from our own perspective and through our own lenses. I suppose what we're being asked to do, you know, and we've seen this and talked about this, it at a psychological level, you know, is to understand people before, you know, they understand us. So try to understand people's perspective, and they also want to be admired. So people have two essential needs there, to be understood and to be admired. I suppose the fundamental, and if you sit here and I ask you to reflect on your own need, you know, everybody likes to be understood. We all know that person in our lives, whether it's a boss, whether it's a friend, that when we're talking to that person, there's nobody else in the world. They get me, they understand me, they listen to me. And we're using empathy with that. Again, Covey wrote about that. It's in one of his 7 habits of highly effective people. Understand and then be understood. So if a lot of people might not have dialogue if they're living on their own, you know, I spoke to somebody the other day and they live on their own and, you know, they're finding it really hard. They're missing that social connection. So when I was talking to her, it was important that I listened and I didn't come in with my own, oh God, I had a good day or I had a bad day. It was really, you know, important that I listened to that person. And I suppose our goal in being, you know, in showing empathy is showing that you understand how others feel and why they feel that way. And that takes a lot of consciousness and self-awareness. You know, we're not used to it. Sometimes we don't like it. Sometimes we like to block emotions. Sometimes we just don't read emotions well. So again, empathy is a lovely one there. I thought this was a nice analogy there in terms of the iceberg. So we know that in reality, we see and experience behaviors. So in work or in your life, people, you have a reputation, I have a reputation. So this is carved out by how we communicate and build relationships through how we behave. So again, there's an awful lot going on under the water. So when you start working with somebody or there's somebody on your team or your boss or one of your peers, we don't know what's going on underneath. You know, there's feelings, emotions, there's a value system, there's beliefs, there's background. So there may be a lot going on there that we might not be aware of. So again, I just think the analogy of the iceberg is really nice. This is the reading list that I developed for you today. Many of you may have read some of it. Martin Newman has some nice books there, really nice. He focuses a lot on leadership and the importance of reading emotions and emotional intelligence around leadership. Daniel Goleman has some great books as well. And he brings in that whole area of IQ. I suppose the idea here is that we're all born with IQ, and while we can learn things, you know, we can't really change the level of intelligence that we're born with. The idea around emotional intelligence is that if I get some piece of feedback and I'm aware of an impact or that had on somebody, I can make a choice whether to improve that. So I can change my behavior. I can improve my self-awareness. HBR, Harvard Business Review, have some great articles there. Daniel Goleman wrote a couple, they're really nice. Mayer and Salovey have great writings, and you have the Roche Martin website as well, and many other websites, and there's much been written about this. We see it even in business pages in leadership development as well. I'd like to leave you with a last quote before we go into Q&A. So people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So thanks for joining us today. And if you have any questions, I'd be delighted to answer them.
Great. Thanks very much, Kay. Congratulations on being bang on 20 past.
That rehearsal paid off
perfect
then.
timing. And I know it was a quick breeze through, but we now have 10 minutes for Q&A if anyone has. And we just have the first one pop through. Here's, Kay, how does a team bring emotional intelligence to play when troubles arise? So presumably in a difficult environment which we're all in at the moment, and perhaps conflict, how does the team bring emotional intelligence to play?
Into their day-to-day. I mean, to me, it's about the leader fostering the culture in the team so that we're okay to bring out, you know, that. So I say if there's a conflict situation, that we're okay to discuss conflict. Now, if there's conflict between two people, I guess that's up to the manager, I suppose, to manage that. Two people themselves can also manage conflict. So, you know, that's quite a broad question and there can be many angles to it. But I would say it should be fostered in the culture of the team, where it's okay at our team meetings, you know, maybe we talk about how are we all feeling today, particularly at this time. Maybe when team meetings are happening over the phone, I think it's important at the beginning to say, how's everybody feeling today? And leave some silence to listen to the answers to that can help.
Great, yeah. Thanks very much, Kay. I think, yes, you're right in terms of new rules and new way of working. We now have new way of working, but we may not have the new rules that have come to play with it. I have another question about empathy. How would you react to someone who you feel lacks empathy?
Yeah, it's very common actually. So you can't, okay, so there is a theory here, we can't change other people, we can only change ourselves. So, you know, we'd love to change that awkward person or that person we don't get on with. So you can start showing empathy yourself and see if the behavior changes then. It depends on what the relationship is now, you know, if it's a boss or a peer, if it's somebody that's a key stakeholder in your life or in your team, I guess you could have that conversation and say, listen, I'm feeling like this today, or I had that situation and I'm feeling like that. So you can express how you're feeling yourself and see how the person will respond. You can try and asking them how they're feeling. Sometimes they'll open up then. So there are a couple of tips without knowing the specifics.
Great. Actually, just related to that, Kay, maybe just tell us how you would recognize somebody who has a lack of empathy. What signs would you look for? How would you identify it?
It probably comes out in body language more so. So it could come out in that they're blocking a conversation that talks about feelings. So somebody might be very action oriented. Typically, you have people who are very action oriented and they want to get the job done and they're moving on and they're busy, and they don't really acknowledge that. So typically, you know, it's in tone. It's maybe when you go into them, they're just not able to acknowledge it. They could fob it off. They might ignore it altogether. You know, and you can feel quite deflated after that, I suppose. So to me, it's the body language, the tone, and I suppose the acknowledgement. If you go into somebody, so if I went into somebody and say, God, I'm feeling really bad, I'm really feeling sad about that today, and they say, oh, it'll be grand, yeah, what do we have to do? You know, that can be difficult. So you can try it a few times, I guess. Or you can put your cards on the table and say, listen, I'm just finding that I've said to you a couple of times, I'm feeling bad about this. I'd like to discuss it with you. And they might not realize. A lot of times people don't realize, to be honest.
Yeah, we present it as it's a fault of people, but it's just their hardwiring might be different. An interesting question: how do you sell the importance of emotional intelligence? And it's in the context that it can be seen as quite emotional, but how would you sell the pragmatic importance of it, especially in today's environment?
In business, is it? Or
I imagine if the question I think is related to, just say you were selling it to a superior, or to a boss, or to a team, that emotional intelligence is important. How would you sell it so that it doesn't appear that you're just talking about being emotional?
I've done that a couple of times where I suppose I brought it into leadership programs, leadership coaching first. I do believe that in organizations we need to make sure that leaders are aware of emotional intelligence. You can do a pilot. I think a pilot is a great way to get anything in to a company. So, you know, if you were in a leadership role or HR role, you know, and you thought this was a good idea, you could pilot it through a team or individual. I've done it with teams. I love to start with the senior team. It's not always possible, and they're not always open to it. I did have a situation actually where I did it with a group of high potential people in the business, and when the senior leadership and other people saw the impact of that, they then said, oh, I want some of that. So, you know, or you could start with a person that's open to it either. So sometimes it is a hard sell, but I guess what we're trying to sell is that if I'm more emotionally aware, my focus is sharper. It's not just about the work, it's about the relationships and the communications that can lead to sharper decision making, greater focus and higher motivation and greater performance. I mean, that there would be the anchors that I would use.
Great. And if you run a test and you get good results, to kind of share those results within the team, and that's probably the ultimate justification of it.
Yeah, and you know, often it's just about having the dialogue. So it's lovely to see that grid up of so as a team, we're very straightforward, or, you know, we have great empathy, or we lack optimism. So it's a great reflection back, you know, when you do that with the team or a group of leaders either. It's really good.
Okay, can I ask you a little bit about, you know, can you practice or can you improve your EQ? And then do you need to be aware that like you could be in danger of faking it, in terms of trying to fake having empathy? You know, if you don't have empathy, or it's low, is there danger of trying to improve it too much where in fact you fake it and it's not authentic?
Yeah, I mean, I think the bottom line there is being authentic. You know, people will figure out if you're not being authentic or not. Yes, you can improve your emotional intelligence and self-awareness. You know, if we go back to the iceberg here, you know, if I behave in some way in the workplace here, and it's coming from some emotion feeling that I say I'm having a bad day, or, you know, I'm annoyed about something, and suddenly, a classic example of this is I'm going to one meeting, I'm going into another meeting. I had a bad interaction in the last meeting. I haven't had time to process it. I'm going straight into the next meeting, and I'm bringing that emotion, maybe, and frustration and annoyance into that. So I need to, you know, stop myself and reflect. And so you definitely can learn it. It's a journey though, and I would say different people, again, going back to what we were, our family, you know, and how our families processed emotion, and then the experience we had growing up. Did we expose ourselves to more emotion? Did we avoid it? Do we block it? So definitely, yes, you can, to answer your question. And faking it, you know, I think you'll know. I mean, I definitely know people that, you know, they're all smiles and all, it seems false, I guess.
Right, a related question that is around learning from your mistakes. Should you kind of reflect upon the situation afterwards and process it mentally, or is there a role for journaling and writing it down, or what's the best way to learn from mistakes as you go through the EQ journey?
So I'm a big believer in journaling, and anybody I coach, I encourage them to keep a journal. So typically, you know, when you're coaching or going through your life, you're going to make mistakes, and that's how you learn. So I would write it down. I wouldn't over agonize on it. You can either talk to somebody about it, process it yourself, take the key learnings from it. I suppose take those top 3, you know, if I had this again, what would I do differently type of writing, and write it down. And what the good thing about that is, when, you know, if I'm coaching somebody and we move on 3 months time and the same thing happened again, we can look back and compare. So I really believe in journaling. I think we should learn from our mistakes. We're all making them all the time. But I think to write down, you know, what it was the mistake that you felt, and what are your learnings from it, I think are key.
Great. We have time for one more question, but in the meantime, just a comment from one of the attendees. If there's lots of stats out there on organizations with higher emotional intelligence having higher financial results, so that supports a lot of what you were saying, Kay. Just a final question, because a lot of people are now, you know, they would have had quite clear demarcation between their work lives and their home lives. And now that demarcation line is a lot thinner, and if it's even a line at all. And any just tips in terms of what we can learn from emotional intelligence and trying to balance homework in the current environment?
Yeah, I think plan out your day if you can. I think take breaks. Depending on your home life, there may be more people in the house than usual, or there may be, you may be on your own. So I guess you have to manage the amount of motion that's going on around you as well. I know for me, it's taking breaks sometimes. Emotions can run high, or people can be at different phases. So I think to get those breaks, or get air, take a walk, get some time for yourself as well. And acknowledge, I think asking people, how they're doing. So, I heard on the radio yesterday that people are having more lunches together and meals together than usual. Well, why don't we ask, well, how are you doing today? How are you feeling today? What are you finding hard around this? So I think asking the questions, pausing, taking time for yourself, and having a plan for your own day, I think, can help.
Great. And in fact, we can probably learn from the home environment and dealing with the people around us that we can bring into our work life a little bit better, I imagine.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, Kay, thank you very much.
No problem.
If there's no more questions, I don't be standing in the stampede between people and their lunch. The video and slides will be uploaded to the ICBE website later on today or tomorrow. And finally, thanks to all who attend today, and I look forward to seeing you at the next ICBE Lunchtime Bites. And Kay, Joyce, thank you very much for all that great advice.
No problem. Thanks, Owen, and thanks to everybody. Take care.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.